love to bake, and I want to share with you something that I'm making now that the weather is getting cooler. It is one of my favorite things to make and utilize ingredients, as many as possible, even ones that are going bad, and that is banana bread. I originally started making banana bread through a recipe I got from the Better Homes and Gardens, like old school cookbook, kind of has a red and white checkerboard cover to it, and I've adapted it over the years. This is one of my dog Penny is watching me and making noises. This is one of the most what? I need to do this. This is a pretty easy, quick recipe. You need to preheat your oven to 350 degrees, which I have already done, and take a loaf pan, and this one is 8.5 by 4.5, but you can use a 9 by 5 or an 8 by 5 as well. Even if it's non-stick, you're gonna butter or use shortening and spray and grease the inside. And I actually, with a non-stick pan, I only go up halfway. It's what the recipe used to say before, and so it's what I always do. I use butter, and I always put extra in the corners. That's a trick. That's a tip. And in my mixing bowl, I'm going to take my bad bananas. This is 3. You could use 3. You could use 4. It's not the end of the world. Make sure your hair's put back. Your hands have been washed. It's a fun, family-friendly, easy for kids to make, and I think kids like making this, and unfortunately today I don't have any helpers, but these bananas are basically oozing out of their peels. You need some salt, and you need about 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. I eyeball it. I sprinkle it on the bananas. This is going to help release some of the moisture and bring out more of that banana flavor. I'm going to take a potato masher. You could also use a fork or a spoon, or if you had a hand mixer, that's fine too. I try to make this as simple and as few dirty dishes as possible. So you'll see I have a 1 teaspoon measurer, I have a spoon, and I have a 1/2 cup. I also have a 1/4 cup, but that is in with my sugar, and I'll show you that here shortly. The softer your bananas are, the easier and quicker they'll mash. If there's chunks, that's fine. So I mash them up, and I used a clear glass bowl so you could see what I'm doing. And you'll get a lot of noise because it's a glass bowl. Now that we've mashed our bananas, to this we're going to add, and this is where my recipe has changed dramatically from the original Better Homes and Gardens cookbook recipe. I use 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar. You could use light brown sugar or dark brown sugar, it doesn't matter. I think it adds a richness to the banana bread. You just pack it down in your 1/4 cup measurer, and it should come out in one nice clump. You're going to add 1/2 cup of regular white sugar. I know what you're thinking, that's a lot of sugar, and it definitely is. You don't want to eat the whole loaf in one sitting. To that, we're going to add 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. It could be canola, it could be a blend oil. To this, I'm going to add 1 egg right from the get-go. I don't have to pre-mix anything. Add your egg. And then we're going to take our spoon or spatula, whatever you prefer, and you're just going to gently mix this. You want it combined. Basically, you want to make sure the egg is combined. Everything else will fall into place. No big clumps of sugar, brown sugar, or visible yellows or whites of the egg. So give this a nice stir. And a big spoon or rubber spatula works really good here. This should be somewhat liquidy. Now we're going to add our flour or flours. If you have whole wheat flour in your house, this is a good opportunity to use it. I like a blend of a 1/2 cup of whole wheat and 1 cup of regular all-purpose flour. If you don't have whole wheat, just use 1.5 cups of regular all-purpose white flour. I also am going to say I don't measure the flour for this banana bread like I normally measure flour. I normally scoop the flour into my measuring cup everything else I do when I bake. But in this case, because of how that recipe originally was written and how I've always done it, I have just scooped the measuring cup in. Then I shake it till it's somewhat level and I add it. So I'm going to add 1/2 cup of whole wheat flour, and then I'm going to do 1 cup of all-purpose unbleached white flour. Like I said, you can use all regular unbleached flour, all-purpose, if you want. I don't know if you'll get the lift if you use all wheat flour. So I only use a portion of it to wheat flour. I hope that's not too confusing. 1/2 cup of whole wheat flour and 1 cup of regular all-purpose flour. And this one I use so much that I actually keep a measuring scoop in here. And like I said, I do not measure it like I would any other time I bake. This is a recipe I have been doing since I was a child. We've already added our salt. Next, we're going to add our leavening ingredients. I'm going to take my spoon and I'm going to kind of make a well in the middle of my flour. It's sitting on top. I didn't mix it in yet. I'm going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. And just so you know, I am completely eyeballing that 1/4 teaspoon and sticking it in there. Then I'm going to do 1½ teaspoons of baking powder. And here's a trick, and I probably have said it in other videos in the past if you've seen any. And I'm really low on baking powder. Powder puffs and soda spreads. And once you get that, it kind of makes sense with every time you add a leavener, soda, especially cookies, soda spreads, and powder puffs. So baking powder is going to help it rise, and the baking soda is going to help it kind of spread out. So I added those in. I'm also going to add my secret ingredient. The original recipe said to use cinnamon. You could use cinnamon if you want. You want a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. I go above and beyond, and I get something from the Spice House called pumpkin pie spice. You can buy pumpkin pie spice at the grocery store by various other spice brands. This is a specialty company out of Chicago, and you can buy them online. I'll put a link below in the description box. I get nothing for this. I'm not endorsing it, but the Spice House pumpkin pie spice, it has a ridiculously fragrant smell. It's mostly cinnamon, but it also has mace, allspice, nutmeg, ginger, and clove. And the difference between this and a store-bought pumpkin pie spice is it leaps and bounds. Even in the color, you'll notice a difference, but the smell in general, I think, is phenomenal. You can use cinnamon if you want. I've done it before in a pinch, but no matter what you use, you want to use a 1/4 teaspoon of your cinnamon or your pumpkin pie spice. You could even use apple pie spice if you buy it at the grocery store and you want to try something different. It's absolutely fine. This is the hardest part of the entire batter. You have all your spices and your baking soda and your baking powder in this well on top of the flour. You're going to gently fold it into the flour without really mixing it in the batter. Just for a couple of stirs. You kind of want to just spread it out. Then you can go in and stir it. And you're going to only stir it gently. I would not suggest a hand mixer at this point. I would say use a rubber spatula or a big mixing spoon if you have one. And just moisten the flour mixture into the bananas and sugar and egg and oil. And you just want it wet looking. But if there's little lumps of flour, it's fine. It should kind of be similar to a muffin mix if you've ever made muffins. So it's nice and moist. This is the moment where if you wanted to add nuts, you can add a 1/2 cup of nuts. Chop them up, walnuts, pecans, work good in this. If you don't have nuts, if you don't want to add nuts, don't add nuts. It's that simple. Pour it into your baking pan, and you're going to put it in the oven. You want it in the center of the oven, 350, and it takes roughly 50 to 60 minutes depending on how your oven's internal temperature is and how your oven bakes. Everybody's ovens are different. So I would say check it around the 50-minute mark. It should spring back if you touch it in the center. If it's liquidy, do put it in a little longer. It's that simple. I'll show you pictures of mine when I take it out. And that's how simple it is. I think I'm going to pass on the nuts on this one today. So I'm just going to pour it in. You're going to give it a good shake and then pop it in the oven. Like I said, 50 to 60 minutes until it looks done. And you're going to take it out of the oven, let it cool in its pan for about 10 minutes, and then you can take it out of the pan and it will steam as you do that. You will notice some steam from the bottom. Wrap it in tin foil and it will stay moist and it will stay fresh for probably about 5 days if it can last that long. Thanks for watching. I hope you try making banana bread and I hope you enjoy it. Let me know in the comments if you have any hints, tricks, tips, or questions, and thanks. Have a great day.